Newcastle man Bill McClure suffered a debilitating stroke a few years back, but was determined not to be beached by the condition. As therapy, he built a scaled-down version of a prawn trawler, which he now plans to cruise to the Barrier Reef. He's called the boat White Gates, an old name for the suburb of Wallsend from where Bill spent much of his life toiling toward his dream.
Tomorrow's the end of the dream, the end of the tunnel, eh? Yeah, I've been minding my way out of Newcastle for 4 years. I've finally done it. Just Tin Can Bay first stop and then 4 stations north. Yeah, up and down the coast.
Bill trained his brain to building the boat, even casting its metal fittings and equipment. Bill, who calls himself a swagman of the sea, has allowed himself few creature comforts apart from the odd ingenious inclusion, such as this waterproof toilet paper dispenser. To while away the quieter moments, Bill has taken up the accordion, looking forward to tapping out a tune in some idyllic tropical anchorage. But tonight, Bill's tuning in to NBN News to see what weatherman Nat Jeffrey has in store.
Fog, smog and pungent odours have greeted many early risers this week, with climatic conditions trapping the city's pollution close to the ground. By mid-morning, the haze has cleared, and according to monitoring experts, skies are clearer now than they have been in the past. Big industries are responsible for their own pollution output. The more they put out, the more they pay the state government. Many have invested heavily in monitoring and reduction equipment. The Independent Clean Air Society conducts training courses for the latest monitoring techniques throughout Australia and overseas. But the non-profit organisation's job won't be finished until it does itself out of business.
We'd love to think that we could get to that degree, and obviously the Clean Air Society and the local environment protection authorities in the various states, we're all doing our job to try and reduce it as to the extent that is humanly possible, and let's hope that we can put our resources elsewhere, and a lot of the resources that go to environment elsewhere in the future.
Usually the time of enemy attack, First Light saw a small but proud group of diggers gather in Taree.
As the dawn is even now about to face the night, So let their memory inspire us to work for the coming of the new light into the dark places of the world. We will remember them.
Medals worn by the veterans were a small but significant reminder of what our soldiers did in times of war. The Salvation Army Band led the dawn parade from Fotheringham's Hotel to the memorial clock, as veterans of all ages and eras remembered those who fought for our country but never made it home. As our veterans get older and the numbers marching fall, the spirit of the Anzac legend lives on as a selfless service of devotion to duty. Further up the coast in Coffs Harbour, crowds lined the streets to cheer those whose courageous spirits soldier on. Norm Cooper, the oldest surviving World War I veteran, led the parade through the streets of Coffs Harbour. Norm was joined by fellow veterans and their family members, as well as representatives from the Army, Air Force and Navy and the Guide and Scouting movement. Coming to a halt in the Coffs Harbour city centre, wreaths were laid in memory of the fallen. Children prayed for the safety and happiness of soldiers of both the past and the present.
Almighty God, watch over all those serving in the armed forces and those who still suffer disabilities through sickness or injuries sustained in war.
After the service, the crowd disbanded, many heading for local RSL clubs for a beer, a chance to catch up with some mates, and the odd game of two-up.
The fields of the Newcastle International Hockey Centre turned on plenty of speed for the 2 days of competition. The city teams in the yellow shirts were consistently kept on the back foot by the hungrier countrysides. The outstanding standard amongst the junior sides has left state selectors with all sorts of problems. But before the games even started, the selectors were in trouble anyway. They failed to name senior sides for city or country despite 2 months' notice. How the state side will now be picked is unclear. No worries though in the under-18s. Selectors wasted no time naming the state side for the Australian Championships in June. Among the Blues team, Sean Dancer from Ballina, Peter Taylor from Tamworth, Ewan Neild from Newcastle and Gavin Drennan from Gosford.
The news came as a bitter disappointment to students who'd been lobbying intensively to see the station built.
After months of wrangling, when we've finally got to a position where everybody is in agreement with all of the construction of the station, Baird now turns around and says that it's not going to be built.
After questioning the Transport Minister a number of times in Parliament, member for Waratah John Price says he was dismayed to finally be told by Mr Baird that on the recommendation of his department, the station should not proceed. Doubts were cast on the results of a transport study commissioned by the government after feasibility studies and surveys were carried out by both university engineers and the Hunter Valley Research Foundation.
The problem we see now is that Bruce Baird has pulled it on the basis of this report, and we know fully well that the report is no good. It's commissioned to a $2 shelf company, which is a question on its credibility in the first place.
The Student Council claims that State Rail has already spent $80,000 on plans for a Warrabrook station and that a development application is due to go before Newcastle City Council tomorrow night. The federal government has already allocated $2.5 million to the project, which has won the support of residents, the university administration, students and City Council aldermen. But the funding will lapse unless Mr Baird approves the plan. Alderman John Sutton and the Students' Association are convinced the state government is out to deliberately derail the plan.
We believe that Baird is saying no to building the station at the university because that enhances the argument for keeping the line at Newcastle. And we all know that the state government wants to see the tracks end at Civic.
Staff were busily cleaning up at the Davistown RSL club south of Gosford after thieves rifled poker machines and ransacked offices in search of cash.
They've obviously cased the place before they've hit it, and they were probably in and out in maybe 10 minutes.
At about 5 o'clock this morning, thieves backed a stolen car to the club, smashed a door and cleaned out poker machine cash boxes. The robbers got away with several $1,000s, but left behind a large damages bill. It's the second time the club has been broken into in as many months. Alarms sounded throughout the raid, alerting an employee who lived nearby. He arrived in time to see the robbers speeding from the scene. The driver of the getaway car swerved at the employee, who swung a baseball bat at the windscreen of the car.
They've taken a swerve and apparently they were yahooing, and quite glad of their achievements when they left here, so hopefully they'll get caught.
Detectives later found the stolen car near a wharf at Saratoga and suspect the robbers may have made off in a stolen boat. Cash boxes were found in the water. Police at the entrance are investigating an armed hold-up at the Bateau Bay Hotel last night. 2 staff members locking up at 11 o'clock were confronted by a gunman who forced them back into the building. They were tied up and the offender stole one of the employees' cars as well as a large amount of money from the hotel. The car was later found abandoned.
Just before midday, a man entered the Commonwealth Bank demanding cash.
He approached the teller who was serving customers at the bank and demanded money from the bank by using a shortened firearm.
Staff complied, handing over an undisclosed amount of money. The man was last seen running down the main street. Locals in the small coalfields town were disturbed by the armed hold-up.
We were very shocked actually, because normally it's just a quiet little town and you don't ever have anything like this.
The thief is described as a man in his 30s, about 185 centimetres tall, of fair complexion and dark hair in a crew cut. He was wearing a brown top, blue jeans and thongs. Police have called on anyone with information regarding the incident to contact Cessnock Police. Jane Anderson, NBN News.
It's been more than a month of activity between 8 and 18 ships waiting to be loaded. 15 vessels are sitting off the coast tonight. Each ship is averaging about a week's wait. For the bigger vessels, that's a cost of up to $10,000 a day. The Japanese have been taking a lot of the coal. With the rise of the yen against the American dollar, the coal has become cheaper. Coal loaders are working 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, filling the vessels in quick time. Authorities say the lineup should continue for an extended period. Peter Ryan, NBN News.
It happens in every suburb, in every town, in every city across the land, usually behind closed doors. Nearly always the victims are women and the perpetrators their male companions.
There's a whole lot of reasons why people stay, and they keep hoping to get better. I mean, a lot of times it's not that they don't care about their partner, they do care, but they just want the violence to stop.
Too many women are subjected to domestic violence, but the abuse isn't just physical. It can be verbal, emotional, financial or sexual. Pat Wakely from the Domestic Violence Committee says women are not powerless.
A lot of times what we'd see is women who have been putting up with a situation for years and years and feeling that nothing can be done about it, and in the vast majority of cases things can definitely be done and the abuse can be stopped.
Pat Wakely says a woman can take out an apprehended violence order, which is like a good behaviour bond. It gives the woman some protection, and only if the order is broken will charges be laid. Jane Anderson, NBN News. Designers from across the country entered the Wearable Wool Awards. Garments were varied, everything from day wear to elegant evening fashions and wedding dresses.
Every garment has to have a 60% wool content. Overalls, a lot of them actually 100% anyway.
The judges were Prue Acton, Jill Fitzsimons and Anita Lewis. They'll be at the Fashion Parade tonight to present awards to the winners. The top 90 garments will be shown off during the ceremony at Armidale's Ex-Services Club.
Most of them are functional this year except for the fantasy wear, of course, and we just love fantasy wear because it really is right over the top.
The judges said the standard of design and workmanship was exceptionally high this year, making the selection very difficult.
The surf may have looked a mess, but these riders were still able to dress it up. The Moray Boogie International has been able to attract some of the world's best bodyboarders to Redhead Beach. California's Jay Reel is ranked number 2 in the United States, but was upstaged by Foster's Shane Chalker. Chalker convincingly beat the American, forcing him to fight through the repechage rounds.
I couldn't see what the other guy was doing out there, but I felt like I did the best I could for the conditions.
All eyes, though, were on new Australian champion, 17-year-old Ben Holland from Terrigal. Holland showed the good form that won him the title is still well and truly with him.
Stay with myself, it's just that thing's just behind me, it's just boosting me all the way. Hopefully we'll go further.
Big crowds are expected for the finals tomorrow afternoon, and the competitors will definitely be turning it on because it's the last chance they get to compete before the Australian Grand Slam starts in October.
With local crime increasing and community concern heightening as a result, Newcastle Police, led by Detective Senior Sergeant Vince Fallons, recently conducted Operation Powder Puff. Its aim to determine the level of crime in the area and those responsible.
We saturated the area with these police, including detectives, general duties, acts investigation, water police, to assist us to locate the persons who have actually been described to us and who may be committing this crime.
Investigations initially focused on drug activity, but provided leads to other reported crimes, including car stealing and malicious damage. 32 arrests were made, 115 charges laid. Beach theft was a major concern.
We were given certain descriptions of suspects for beach stealings. Again, we're out looking for these people.
As a result, a 24-year-old Shortland man has been charged with 44 counts of stealing personal property from beaches between January and April this year. Following another lead, police located a $15,000 men's watch which had been stolen from a Newcastle store 4 months ago. From there, they identified a suspect and subsequently arrested and charged a 22-year-old Newcastle man. That same man was then linked with the theft of $42,000 worth of jewellery from a Central Coast store 12 months ago. Detective Fallon says the operation has been a success and will be repeated.
Four years of commitment working his way through his apprenticeship has given the 22-year-old boilermaker an unexpected windfall. 7 weeks of travel around England and the US studying his trade.
Bringing back some initiatives that they've started over there and bring it back here and implement them over here.
Michael started his trade with the Hunter Valley Training Company and then moved on to IRW Fabrications at Carrington. The Big Brother movement, which was set up in 1925, originally brought migrants in from Britain. Now they're sponsoring scholarships back to the UK. The trip is Michael's first overseas. Just to make sure everything works out, he's taking his mum with him. Peter Ryan, NBN News.
This may look like an average class in an average school, but the Japanese teacher of these 3rd and 4th year students at Arcadia Vale Public School is not in the classroom, but is being beamed in by satellite, with the lessons coming via television.
Carefully, and I'll say it for you again and then see if you can say it. Shizuka ni shite kudasai.
The Talkback TV project is being produced by a group of private companies and the Department of Education. The program was screened for the first time today in 14 schools throughout Lake Macquarie.
It gives an expert a chance to contact a lot of children for a very small price.
But the idea of a TV rather than a teacher doing the talking is taking a little getting used to.
It was very funny, actually. I've never ever talked to a television, only when I've been a little kid.
I'm not used to talking to TVs.
What do you prefer, a real teacher or a TV?
TV, because they're fun and they don't yell at you.
But the lessons and the words that are coming from a world away are sinking in.
Domo arigato.
What does that mean?
Thank you.
Thank you. Scott Bevan, NBN News.
It's one of the highlights of the Australian Bowl circuit calendar, and all the stars were there. Australian representatives Rex Johnson, Bob King and John Snell bowled over unfortunate competitors who came up against them yesterday. In all, 24 invitees from across the nation converged on Lake Cat-Eye for the 12th annual tournament. It's one of the only events that has been on the Australian Bowl circuit since its inception in 1981. And what was especially pleasing to the organisers was the number of younger players taking part. More than half of the bowlers were under the age of 40. Spectators are also starting to return to the game, with up to 300 people attending the club today. The high standard of bowls is expected to go through the roof tomorrow as the four battle it out for the crown.
The 6-month project has been organised by the Camden Haven Protection Society. Based at the Katang Nature Reserve, it'll be funded by the federal government's Land Care and Environmental Action Program. 15 young, previously unemployed people from the Hastings area will have the job of rehabilitating the vegetation. It's hoped they'll not only acquire new skills, but gain practical experience in land care and environmental management. And the project has added benefits. The work undertaken will help preserve the area for future generations. Young people wanting to participate need to be aged between 15 and 20 and be registered with the CES.
When Dame Tiata arrived at Broadmeadow today, she began a spiritual journey. After a welcome by the region's Awabakal tribe, the Queen was escorted through a purification ritual. Walking past a fire prepared specially to strengthen and cleanse the guests, the Queen stepped through the smoke onto sacred ground.
Good to be able to share some of our culture and some of our lifestyles and beliefs and our ceremonies that you just came through with you. You've done that with us.
Dame Tiata is the Maori's first queen, breaking 5 generations of male succession following the death of her father in 1966. Tomorrow she'll attend the enthronement of the new Bishop of Newcastle, Roger Hurft, held in high esteem by the Maoris following his long service in New Zealand.
Mrs Cooper's family rallied around her today. Last night, the 86-year-old pensioner had been at home just outside Cessnock in the Hunter Valley with her eldest daughter. Around 11 o'clock, 2 men in their early 20s dragged her out of bed demanding money. When she refused, one attacked her. Mrs Cooper needed 11 stitches in her hand. It's believed the men broke into the house through a side window. After the attack, they cut the phone line and searched the house for money, escaping with Mrs Cooper's fortnightly pension. This is the 4th attack on Mrs Cooper in the last 5 months. She believes it's the same people each time. As the intruders left last night, they warned they would be back. The family has been stunned by such cowardly attacks on an elderly woman.
Something should be done. It should be taken very serious, and something should be done, and done now.
Police are investigating the attack, questioning several suspects. They've warned everyone in the Cessnock region to be wary and report anything suspicious. Peter Ryan, NBN News. The bandit entered the National Australia Bank in the Junction carrying a shortened firearm, obviously trying to hide his identity.
He had a brown bushy type wig, a white hat, a scarf around his face. He also had a dark blue sports coat and believed to be wearing blue jeans.
He threatened staff, was handed a large sum of money and ran for the door. An off-duty policeman was in the bank with his wife. He chased the gunman, a short scuffle followed, but the bandit escaped. The off-duty detective suffered shock. The bandit raced away in a green Commodore.
As we were driving by, mate, he flew out the side of the National Bank there, and we just seen him scream by.
Police located the Commodore in a car park in Cooks Hill, about 2 kilometres away. It's understood the bandit then picked up another vehicle. Tonight he is still at large. It's the 3rd robbery at the Junction's National Australia Bank in the last 2 years. In May 1991, police were involved in a dramatic arrest after a man threatened staff with a gun. Peter Ryan, NBN News.
Of all the possible midlife career changes, going from tapping keyboards to pulling beer taps must be one of the more extreme paths to take. Less than 12 months ago, Ian Cameron, Sandra Newton and Prue Burford were managers in the Sydney office of the IBM Computer Company. Today, they're hotel publicans.
IBM offered a voluntary separation package and we really were looking for something to do that was completely different.
That search for something different ended at the historic Bellbird Hotel in the Hunter Valley. Built in 1908 to slake the thirst of a thriving coal mining community, the Bellbird Hotel is the only pub in town these days, which means the locals were a little wary when these city slickers became the Bellbird beer barons.
The first week we were here was one of our best weeks for takings. But I think for people, I'm not sure whether they're coming to have a look at us or whether they thought, being a new publican, they might get free beer. But after that settled down, they've more than given us a go.
But the locals now count the former high-tech trio as among their own.
Oh, I hope he don't ever leave here, because if he does, I'll have to find somewhere else to drink.
Nor would these publicans swap middies for microchips again. If someone had told you 12 months ago, when you were still in the computer industry, that today you would own a pub, what would have you said to them?
Not in my wildest dreams. The last place I ever thought I would be standing behind a bar. In front of one, sure, but not behind.
While the rest of the world looks to computers as a sign of tomorrow, the three publicans have turned their back on all that, seeing their future instead in a coalfields hotel with a rich past. Scott Bevan, NBN News.